I used to think that my plants were looking pretty good. They were healthy, growing pretty well, and there was nothing majorly wrong with them, but somehow they still looked a bit budget. Not because of the plants themselves, but because of how they were styled. Over time, I found a few tricks that make a big difference. They don't turn your home into a showroom or anything, but they do stop your plants looking really cheap. They're simple changes, nothing that fancy, but they've really helped my space feel more put together. Here's what's worked for me. This is something I didn't plan, but once I saw it working, I started doing it on purpose. Placing plants around something like a window, a mirror, or even a piece of furniture helps create a bit of structure. It gives the space a focal point and makes the plants feel like they're part of the room layout and not just added afterwards. You can see that I've got two taller plants either side of this window. At first I went a bit overboard and plonked a bunch here because the light was good. But I soon realised that having a couple either side is the way to go. It frames the view of the garden nicely. You can do the same thing with bookshelves or sideboards or cabinets. One plant on each end, maybe something taller on one side and trailing on the other. It's nothing complicated, but it helps make the furniture feel grounded in the space. This one is still a work in progress, but I found that adding a few trailing plants can completely change the feel of a space, especially in those awkward or dead spots that really need softening. Above my TV, I've got a long plant shelf that I'm still building out. It's already got a few trailing plants like my Philodendron scandens that is really looking great, my satin pothos that is actually starting to climb the walls, literally, and my Philodendron Brazil that could do with being a bit bushier. Now this is all looking pretty good, but I am planning to add more to really make use of this otherwise dead space above my TV. What wasn't quite working was the Syngonium. Lovely plant, but it's a bit too upright for this spot, so I've swapped it for this little pothos I propagated from cuttings. It's not yet ready to trowel, but once it does, it will help make the whole shelf feel a bit more alive. In my conservatory, I've got a silly amount of bamboo shelving units that I'm working on softening up, and trailing plants are ideal for this. Like this string of hearts softening this edge, for example, or my mixed pothos planter spilling over the top here, or my purple Pelida doing the same thing over there. Again, this is all a work in progress, but it adds texture and movement and helps blend the plants into the space instead of them looking plonked on the flat surface. One thing I've started doing is using art as a backdrop for my plants, just something behind them to add a bit of depth. Plants in front of a plain wall can sometimes feel a bit flat, especially if they're not trailing or particularly big. But when there's a print or a picture frame behind them, they can pop a bit more. It turns the plant into more of a display, even if it's not a particularly exciting plant. You can play with contrast here as well. Put a leafy green plant in front of a colourful print, and it makes everything pop. It's subtle, but it really does help. You don't want to overdo it, of course. Not every plant needs a picture behind it, but in the right spot, it stops the plant from feeling like it's floating in the middle of nowhere. Back to the shelf above my TV. The thing you might notice is that it's quite far from the window, so it's a bit of a dark spot, especially in the morning, and I needed something that would keep the plants happy without making the room look like a greenhouse. Now I could have gone for one of those clip-on grow lights because they are functional and they work in lots of spaces, but because this is the meat and potatoes of my living room, I needed something that blended in more. So instead, I'm using a tall floor lamp with a 36 watt Sansi grow bulb in it. From a distance, it just looks like a normal lamp, but it's actually keeping my trailing plants alive. I've done the same thing over here too, above the console table that, of course, has a whole bunch of plants on top. Another floor lamp with another grow bulb. It lights the space beautifully and it helps the plants underneath keep growing throughout the year. What I found though is that grow lights aren't just for plant care, they actually make the whole room feel brighter. Quelle surprise! When everything's off and I'm relying on natural light, the living room can feel quite gloomy, but as soon as I turn on all the grow lights, the place comes alive. Yes, obviously there is a cost to running them, but they are all LED, so the energy use isn't that bad. I've got most of mine on timers, so they switch on and off automatically, and honestly it's made a massive difference to the feel of my space. Some plants just want to climb. There's no getting away from that, and you can fight it or you can work with it. For absolutely ages, I let my pothos trail out of the pot because, well, that's what I thought you're supposed to do. And there's nothing wrong with this, but if you want a statement piece, giving him something to climb up can really work wonders. Just look at these leaves compared to the ones at the top. Beautiful. The only problem, of course, is that moss poles are a bit ugly, aren't they? You do tend to get the best results with moss poles, but there are other options you can try. Clear plastic command hooks on the wall are a great shout because they're more or less hidden and you can drape your plants where you want them to go. Great for that chic vibe. And then there are these trellis trellises, a stylish option with lots of different shapes and sizes to choose from. But try to avoid bamboo sticks. It's fine in the garden, but tends to ruin the look indoors. One thing I've noticed over time is how much of a difference a single well-placed plant can make. You don't always need loads of little ones. Sometimes just one big statement piece in the right spot can pull the whole room together. My Kentia palm is doing that job for me at the moment. She's big, leafy, and slightly chaotic in the best way. She fills this space under the doorway to my conservatory, and without her there, it just feels a bit empty and unbalanced. At the end of my conservatory, I've got those two tall plants flanking the window. I didn't do it to be symmetrical, it was more of a happy accident. These two needed a spot with lots of light, but it's working well. They frame the window and make it feel more intentional. I'm not saying everything has to be completely balanced or matching because that can look a bit staged, but if there's a space that feels off or like something's missing, sometimes it just needs a bit of height or a stronger shape to really anchor it. And statement plants don't have to be expensive either. This monstera here started from a cutting and just grew over time. This is something I'm still trying to figure out, but I've started paying more attention to how colours work in my space. And not just with the plants, but with the pots and accessories and even the rugs. I've got a rug in the living room and another one in the conservatory. And lately, I've been picking up ceramic pots from TK Maxx that tie in with these colours. Nothing too matchy, just tones that complement the space. It helps everything feel a bit more pulled together. Every now and then, I'll still go for a pot with bold colours or a strong pattern, something punchy to create contrast. Too much of the same colour can feel flat, so having one or two standout pots gives the whole setup a bit more life. What I'm trying to do now is slowly phase out these plain plastic pots that I got from IKEA. They are fine, they've done the job for years, but don't really add anything. The plants look good, of course, but the overall effect is a bit bland. That said, replacing 200 pots doesn't come cheap, so I am taking my time with it. What I've also noticed is that contrast between the plant and the pot really works well. This Stromanth Trio Star, for example, is all pink, green and white and looks pretty amazing in this blue and white patterned pot. Neither one overpowers the other, but they both stand out more because of it. I'm still experimenting, but when the colours work together or work against each other in the right way, the plants just look better. Now, I've always been pretty good at cleaning the room around my plants. I think I inherited that slightly OCD nature from my mother. If you're watching, Mum, she is. Sorry, but you know it's true. Anyway, I'd dust the leaves, wipe the side tables, even clean under the pots if there was a bit of soil like a good boy. But something still wasn't right. The space felt clean, but the plants themselves looked a bit dull. Then one day, I had a proper look and realised the plants themselves were actually a bit mucky. Dust on the leaves and little hard water spots here and there. I'd been cleaning all around them, but ignoring the one thing that should have been the star of the show. So I grabbed a damp cloth and gave the leaves a proper wipe down, and it made the world of difference. Now I make it a regular thing. A wipe a day keeps the deep clean away. Except I do it weekly, I'm not mad. The beauty of this is that it also helps keep pests at bay. It's one of those tiny jobs that barely takes any effort, but makes your plants look 10 times better. Especially under grow lights or if they're near a window where the sun hits. Something I've been thinking about lately is just how some pots just suit certain plants more than others. You see, some plants are bold, some are dainty, some look like they just rolled out of bed. And I find that when I match the pot to the energy of the plant, the whole setup looks more put together. I've already talked about my Trio Star. She's colourful and dramatic and a little bit chaotic, so I've got her in a blue and white pattern pot that's a bit on the fancy side, and it works. A plain pot would have just looked a bit too quiet. On the other hand, I've got a snake plant that's chunky and slow growing and doesn't really ask for much, so I put him in a grey pot with a hint of texture to offset the structural shape of the leaves. It's not about buying expensive pots. Most of mine are from TK Maxx or they're second hand. It's more about paying attention to what the plant looks like and choosing something that complements it. Some plants look great in rustic terracotta, while others need a bit of gloss or colour to stop them disappearing into the background. And if I've got a plant that's not really doing much or just looking a bit scrappy, popping them into a nice pot can make a big difference. Makes it feel more like a feature and less like something I haven't got around to sorting out yet. This one's been a bit of a game changer for me. When everything's at the same level, it can make the space feel flat. Even if the plants themselves look great, it's all happening on one visual plane. But the second you hang something up high, it adds height and movement. I've got my string of hearts hanging in my shelving unit, and even though it's a small plant, it softens the edge and draws the eye upwards. I've done the same with a couple of smaller trailing plants in macrame hangers, and it really helps in awkward spaces, especially corners or near windows where you can't fit much furniture. It is a simple trick, but it makes the room feel taller and a bit more put together. If you haven't seen it yet, then watch my video on 10 mistakes that make your plants look cheap. These tricks are great, but fixing those mistakes first is what really makes a difference.